Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. My name is Yusuf Siraj. I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we are on. As Muslims, it's important to always be at the forefront of justice and giving rights to those who rights are due. As an organization founded and headquartered in Vancouver, British Columbia, we are committed to the process of decolonization and reconciliation with our First Nations and Indigenous communities. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and we thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this country together. Islam Unravelled is the official faith-based community convener for anti-racism initiatives in the province of British Columbia, and we are working in partnership with Resilience ABC Anti-Racism Network. The purpose of today's town hall is to really hear from our community about your experiences regarding anti-Muslim bigotry and Islamophobia, as well as to provide a background on what the threat to Muslims and minorities is and where it comes from, and hopefully what we can do about it. Our agenda tonight will start with an overview and background on the online hate aspect of Islamophobia, as well as the threat of transnational white supremacist ideology, which is really motivating a lot of the hate attacks in both Canada and around the world. We will hear from Corporal Anthony Statham of the RCMP on what hate crimes, incidents, biases are, as well as on the incredible importance of reporting them, even small ones. After Anthony, we'll hear from Sister Naima Ali, who is the president of the Somali Canadian Society of British Columbia, regarding the intersections of hate towards Muslim women who are also visible minorities and who are visibly Muslim. Muslim women happen to be the #1 victims of Islamophobia in Canada. We will then open the floor to hear from you and your fellow audience members what your experiences are with Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bigotry and your thoughts on what can be done about it. We will ask that each speaker or participant limit their comments to around 2 minutes in order to give everyone a chance to speak and to share their lived experiences. The session is being recorded because the feedback we hear from you today will be shared with the province and federal government to inform anti-racism and anti-Islamophobia legislation. Inshallah, we were asked by the Ministry of Diversity, Inclusion and Youth to convene this meeting in order to inform their ongoing decisions, and we take it seriously because working in partnership with all levels of society is what is required in order to end the scourge of Islamophobia in Canada. Your picture and name will be removed prior to any sharing. Anyone who is uncomfortable, please feel free to post your messages in the chat. And what we'll do is we'll read them after we hear from everyone else. So what I really want to start with is this global to local idea of what the hate trends are, how the weaponization of social media and the virus of transnational white supremacist hate infect people and are causing a lot of the attacks and violence that we see today. I'm going to start with data that has been provided to us by our colleagues at Moonshot CV, which is Countering Violent Extremism, through a partnership with Google. So Google has a program called Jigsaw, which is focused on addressing online hate and racism challenges. White supremacist groups, violent far-right extremist groups, have been active in Canada for decades. They've increased their membership and activity over the past few years. While there have been historically about 100 active far-right groups operating in Canada prior to 2015, that number has tripled since the US presidential election in 2016. The groups that previously struggled to maintain any sort of support base have grown significantly. The xenophobic rhetoric accompanying the election in the United States, as well as its aftermath, have arguably emboldened extremist groups, existing ones and ones that were founded thereafter. This has really helped to motivate these groups to spread their ideology and in order to cause more recruits to join them. Today, there's over, as I said, 300 active far-right and white supremacist groups operating in Canada. And the primary way they spread their ideology and recruit new followers is online. So Moonshot CV and Google Jigsaw, they focused on measuring and countering the violent far-right activity in the online space through collecting search data. So this is a lot of what we want to talk about to help you understand exactly what the ecosystem is that is creating extremists. And they looked at hate groups, including neo-Nazis, 3%ers, as well as the KKK, which is active in Canada. And what they found was shocking. During the course of their research, they found that influential personalities continue to play a crucial role within the violent far-right movement, including historical figures such as Adolf Hitler and Mussolini, as well as contemporary extremists such as the Christchurch attacker terrorist and the Norwegian attacker terrorists. We follow a principle that we don't name these people. We don't give them any legitimacy or airtime because this is something that they're after. And we believe that even in private as well as public, they should be denied that right. But their influence is typically achieved through attacks that they have committed, whether they consented to or share their manifestos online, their work, or whatever they produce, for instance, Hitler's autobiography or memes that are shared about white supremacists. Due to the varied background of each personality, it's interesting to see that what is their role within white supremacy, especially in Canada. What we found is that the top 70% of Canadians who are expressing far-right hate have searched for terms such as Hitler was right, Hitler is right, Hitler's a hero. So what we're seeing is that there is this continuation of a mythology about the supremacy of certain groups over others. Now you might be asking, okay, that's interesting, but what is the actual profile of someone who is searching for hate material and who can be motivated towards joining a hate group? And the picture I want to paint for you here and that I want you to understand is that these are real people. These are our neighbors. We'll get into where they actually live, which is our neighborhood. And they are being infected with hate. They're generally white males between the ages of 25 and 34. They're attracted to conspiracy theories that fuel violent far-right extremist ideologies. They find these informations online. They seek them out through integration through initially, material that you wouldn't think is too harmful, such as videos of culture on YouTube, and then that leads to seeking more extremist ideologies such as the Great Replacement Theory or white genocide. And that motivates them to join hate groups. And these are people who are seeking to learn, right? So they are trying to gain more understanding about their mythology of white supremacy, which leads towards a lot of the hate that we're seeing. As Muslims here living in British Columbia, it's interesting to note that the research from Google shows that the rankings of provinces in white supremacist search terms, it goes Ontario, Quebec, and BC in terms of overall searches. But when you account for population, British Columbia is actually number one. In BC, we have seen attacks against Muslims, particularly women wearing hijabs. 3 of my own personal friends were attacked, physically attacked by individuals spewing anti-Muslim comments. The University of British Columbia, where thousands of Muslims go for education and work, is a hotspot of anti-Muslim hate searches in the Greater Vancouver area. Here in BC, it's important to understand that we are not immune to the hate and violence seen in Ontario or Alberta or the United States. And to illustrate that, I want to now share with you some information from Google, which is presented by Moonshot CVE, on what the online hate search environment in British Columbia is like. And I'm just going to share my screen. 1 second. So this data was collected between March 2019 and 2020, the latest data they had. As you can imagine, during COVID, there has been a substantial increase in the amount of online hate directed towards Muslims as well as other minorities, including people from the Asian community, the Black community, the Jewish community as well. But these were the latest data, and it will give you an understanding of what we're trying to deal with here. So the violent search terms that we are seeing in British Columbia, what are they? By far, it's pro-white supremacist neo-Nazi search terms. So people who are interested in this ideology, this hateful ideology, they search for material that substances that. They search for things that reinforce their beliefs. But then they get into anti-Muslim searches, anti-Semitic searches, anti-Black, anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigrant, anti-Asian, and anti-Indigenous search terms, all of it fueling an idea or an understanding of hatred. The number one anti-Muslim search term in Canada is remove kebab. when I first saw that, I thought it was the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. I couldn't imagine why that would be something not only would someone say, but let alone want. Kebabs are delicious. But here's where it gets dark. This term came from a Serbian song that was played during the Bosnian Serbia war, which literally was referring to killing Muslims. So removing kebab means to kill Muslims. That's what this code word means. Then you see the second one, kebab removal. Again, it's to say kill Muslims, get rid of them, remove them. Then kill all Jews and on, and you see it going from there. In British Columbia, reflecting what we see in Canada, over 1,371, so 2,000 altogether within the core of this research, was to kill Muslims. Again, in Canada, those statistics are reflected, so it is a trend that is not just unique to BC. If we look at where these searches are coming from, the anti-Muslim searches in terms of pure volume, as we can see, it makes sense that based on population, Ontario is number one. But if you notice, if you look closely, British Columbia is higher than Quebec, even though our population is nowhere near as large. This shows us that there is a challenge within BC in addressing this narrative of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim search terms. If you look in Vancouver, for instance, down to the area code, what we find here is shocking. It's actually places such as UBC, where we have educational facilities where the largest amount of search terms are originating from. It's not from places necessarily in the rural parts of Vancouver or BC. We're seeing it straight in the heart of our city and by postal code. So, if any of you live in these postal codes, is V6P. That's the number one postal code for Islamophobic hate in Vancouver. These are our neighbors, friends. These are people who we live nearby who are searching for remove kebab or searching for to kill Muslims. Now, one of the challenges that we see is that a lot of people are not familiar with what white supremacist ideology really is. Research reported shows that these groups, what they try to do is hide their understanding and movements based behind organizations, different names, different theories. These include hate groups such as the Proud Boys, the Base, Atomwaffen Division, Three Percenters, the Aryan Strike Force, and Russian Imperial Movement. What they all have, the groups I mentioned, where they were all designated terrorists by the government of Canada, thanks to the advocacy of Muslim groups and organizations, many of whom have been working for years to help address this challenge. But what we see is that the groups are one thing. The ideology itself and its myriad of expressions, it needs to be understood and countered in a productive and evidence-based approach. White supremacy or white supremacism is the belief that white people are superior to those of other races and should thus dominate them. This belief favors the maintenance and defense of white power and privilege. White supremacy has its roots in discredited ideologies of scientific racism and was a key justification for colonialism, which also created crimes against the First Nations people here, that the idea that we are better and that you should become like us, so we'll send your kids to residential schools. It underlines a spectrum of contemporary movements, including neo-Confederates, neo-Nazis, Christian identity movements, which, just like ISIS and Islam, hijacks the message of Christianity for its own warped political mandate. Different forms of white supremacists have put forth different conspiracies or conceptions of who is creating the challenge they're facing, who they're fighting against, who's really white, they are disunited in a lot of things, but united in their hate towards Muslims, Blacks, Jewish people. As a political ideology, they impose and maintain a social and political understanding that white people are on top and that everyone else is below them, and that to keep white people on top, it's okay to kill everybody else. They justify their beliefs through something called the Great Replacement Theory, which is part of this white genocide belief that they have, that over time, what they're saying is that white Europeans, their populations are being demographically and culturally replaced by inferior non-white people, specifically Arabs, Berbers, South Asians, Sub-Saharan Muslim populations through mass migration, demographic growth, and a drop in birth rates. And what they're saying is that this is a plan to replace white people with Muslims, with dark-skinned people, with people who are different than them and in their warped view, inferior. So they feel it's an existential threat. and they just come to an understanding that to defend themselves, they have to start killing people. And this is how they get indoctrinated into this ideology of hate. But where is it being spread? This is a question that we have to understand, is that it's not being spread in book clubs. It's not being spread, on discussions in cafes. White supremacist ideology, which is motivating a lot of the hatred we see in the world today, is being spread online. It is where this story of white disprivilege or white, great replacement theory is infecting people's minds like a virus, and it mutates and it spreads, but it's happening online. People like the Quebec City or Christchurch, New Zealand, or London, Ontario terrorists, they were radicalized online. They might start with academic type hate and engagement-based algorithms directing them on YouTube or Instagram from innocent videos such as greatest accomplishments of European history to why Muslims can never integrate into civilized countries. The New Zealand Royal Commission on the Christchurch shooting found that the shooter was radicalized by YouTube content. And while European countries are banning their symbols, they're not actively engaging social media platforms. In doing so, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they all allow the content to flourish on their platforms. People are then pushed to darker and more radical content on other websites such as 8kun, where they are indoctrinated into hate and motivated to violence. One of the leading organizations we work with that researches this and other hate groups, as well as their impact, is the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. They have found disturbing proofs that the white supremacist movement, their ideologies and ideas are directly linked to terrorism. They're building an international white supremacist network. That's why we say it's transnational, which conducts its online organizing and meetings in plain sight, Twitter, YouTube, and amongst others. All of this leads to the key challenge of our time, which is the weaponization of social media by hate groups to target racial and religious minorities. Facebook is currently being sued in the United States by Muslim advocates because they have presented to Facebook 200 incidences of Facebook hate groups against Muslims. They didn't even try to hide their names. It was Anti-Islam Union, Patriots Against Islam. Facebook only took down about half of them and left the others up. They have been used to orchestrate the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar, mass murders of Muslims in India, riots and murders in Sri Lanka, and targeted Muslims for death. Facebook itself has been where a lot of the attackers have started to share their materials. The Christchurch, New Zealand mosque massacre, for instance, was live streamed on the site, and the video was shared by many people nationwide. And Facebook has willingly ignored the dangers posed by anti-Muslim content to the welfare of Muslims across the globe. Their own civil rights audit, and I'll end with this, their own civil rights audit completed in 2019, after nearly 2 years of process, came to understand that they purposefully singled out Muslims, and the anti-Muslim hate on the platform was a longstanding problem. Their own auditors wrote that the organization of events designed to intimidate members of the Muslim community at gathering places to the presence of content demonizing Islam and Muslims, and the use of Facebook Live during the Christchurch massacre created an atmosphere where Muslims feel under siege online, because they are. It's the start of where hatred and Islamophobia is coming from, the online environment. Now, to talk more about what exactly is hate, what exactly is biases and discrimination, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Corporal Anthony Statham from the RCMP, to share some more insights about that. And he has a presentation for us today. Anthony.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me okay? I have a short presentation this evening. It really has to do with the law in Canada. What I'm going to try and do is tie in the content with the things that Yusuf has talked about. And I should also let everyone know I have to leave as soon as I'm done the presentation. I will have my email obviously on the screen, and I am in contact with Yusuf and Tarek on the regular. So if anyone has any questions, please send them to me. Happy to answer any questions there are out there. I'm just looking at the screen of everyone here, and I can see a few people that I know and haven't seen in a while, including Musa and Haroon. So hello, it's nice to see you. just quick introduction, everyone. My name is Anthony Statham. I'm a corporal with the RCMP. I'm in charge of the Provincial Hate Crimes Unit, which unfortunately I have to report is only myself at the moment. There is one other full-time hate crime investigator in British Columbia with the Vancouver Police Department. That being said, all police officers in the province are trained to deal with complaints of hate, prejudice, or bias, whether they meet the elements of a criminal offense or not. So it's not as though I'm the only one who investigates these things. Quite the opposite. They're investigated by police in every department in British Columbia. My role is more from an oversight and consultative role for the most part, with some exceptions. What I'm going to talk to you about here, and it really doesn't matter whether we get the content of the presentation going or not. They're very basic slides that just basically put what I'm saying up on the board. Well, here we go. Excellent. Thanks so much, Yusuf. Next slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the best definition we have for the word hate crime in this country. So you may be interested to know hate crime is not actually a legal term. When we talk about hate crime in Canada, in the public domain, we're talking about a few different types of offenses at once. So in generally speaking, a hate crime is a criminal offense committed against a person, property, where the motivating factor is hate, prejudice, or bias against an identifiable group. Next slide. So what is an identifiable group? It's actually defined a few times over in the Criminal Code of Canada, but the most complete definition is in section 718.2, where an identifiable group is any section of the public distinguished by race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression, or any other similar factor. This is the most complete definition in the Criminal Code because it includes the or other similar factor, which essentially is meant to cover groups not yet specified in law. Next slide. So there are three categories of hate crimes in Canada. When we talk about hate crimes, these are the three things we're talking about. And Yusuf, these are animated, so you can just put them all on the screen. We have hate-motivated crimes, which we deal with under criminal code sentencing principles. We have hate propaganda crimes, which are willful promotion of hatred, public incitement of hatred, and advocating genocide. And then we also have mischief to property, religious or educational property, but really any property that's used primarily by an identifiable group. Next slide. You can just click through the content, Yusuf, when you get to the bottom part, that's where you stop. Thank you. So just got a graphic up here of a suspect who was involved in a viral racist rant in Abbotsford a few years ago. Very interesting case because this person was convicted of assault. And it was a no-touch, there was no physical element to it. It was essentially a no-touch assault. And it was just a very aggressive, very sort of violent language used towards the victim. So if somebody, we're talking about things like assault, mischief, so that's damage to property, or uttering threats or criminal harassment, those are sort of, for lack of a better description, run-of-the-mill hate-motivated crimes in Canada. They're at the first instance, they're treated by the police the way any other crime would be. They get arrested for assault, they get charged with assault, they get convicted of assault, and then at the sentencing phase, the court has the ability to impose a longer sentence, where it's able to consider hate, prejudice, or bias as an aggravating factor under section 718.2 of the Criminal Code. Next slide. Sorry, I'm just going to mention here that, excuse me, just one sec. So probably the most famous case in British Columbia where where the sentencing or criminal code sentencing principles were applied was the murder of Nirmal Singh Gill in 1998 in Surrey. He was a caretaker who was beaten to death outside a temple in Surrey. Where manslaughter in Canada typically carries a 10-year sentence, in this case, the suspects received 18 years. So it can have a significant effect on sentencing. Next slide. So what is a hate-motivated incident? So differentiating a hate-motivated incident from a hate-motivated crime, a hate or bias incident can be motivated by all the same factors as a hate-motivated crime, but it doesn't reach the threshold of being a criminal offense. Often involves verbal abuse or offensive statements, including use of racial slurs. And if not addressed, the incidents can escalate to criminality and violence. They, of course, can cause trauma, fear, and depression for victims, and they can have a negative impact on senses of community and individual safety. The bottom line with incidents like this is that we, regardless of whether somebody thinks they meet the elements of a criminal offense or not, they should always be reported to the police. At minimum, the police are always able to go and speak to somebody about their behavior, identify them, figure out where they're at in life and whether there's any, cause for escalation of their behavior or threats to public safety. Next slide. Willful promotion of hatred. So this is the law that when we use the term hate speech in Canada, this is usually the law that's going to apply. So it's everyone who, by communicating statements other than private conversation, willfully promotes hatred against an identifiable group. Just to what Yusuf said earlier, how do we deal with pervasive online hate? This is the law. This is really the best law for the most part that we have against combating hate speech online. Next slide. And that law is always balanced against Section 2 of the Charter, which guarantees freedom of conscience and opinion, belief, and expression, and that includes freedom of the press. If you just hit one more there, Yusuf. The fun fact is that there's no such thing as free speech in Canada. That's a right guaranteed to Americans under their First Amendment. In Canada, we have, for lack of a better description, a reasonable limit on that that was determined by litigation of Section 319(2) of the Criminal Code. So we have freedom of expression in Canada, not free speech. Next slide. Advocating genocide under Section 318 of the Criminal Code. So genocide is defined as acts that are committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part any identifiable group, that being killing members of the group or deliberately inflicting conditions calculated to bring about its physical destruction. Elements of this particular law can cross over with Section 319(2), willful promotion of hatred. Next slide. I didn't get into 319(1). That's public incitement of hatred. That's not very seldom used in Canada because it's a real-time offense that the police have to sort of determine on site. So mischief to property under Section 434(1) of the Criminal Code applies to destruction or damage to property used by an identifiable group, including religious or educational premises. This graphic is obviously from Cold Lake, Alberta, a few years ago. So if the commission of the mischief is motivated by hate, prejudice, or bias, this section of the code also provides for increased punishment, and that provision is built right into this law. Next slide. So just a few kind of questions here to throw up for clarity. So victims of hate crime, victims experiencing hate crime in real time, what should they do? So the step one is to try and create distance as best you can. It's not always possible. There are many different ways to create distance, whether by walking away, running away, going into a safe place, getting on or off public transit. Those are all ways to create distance. Call 911 and wherever possible, and ask for help from those around you and create witnesses. I have just a web address here for Resilience BC. There's much more information on how to deal with situations like this on the website. Next slide. So another question, I'm a victim of a hate crime that happened previously. What should I do? Step one is to call your local police department. If you know about something that happened to somebody else, and you're not sure where the incident happened, the best thing to do is call your local police department. Of course, if you know the jurisdiction where something occurred, like for instance, you know of something that happened in Surrey, call the Surrey RCMP. You can ask for help from witnesses, of course, if we're talking about something that happened just minutes before, and of course, gather evidence from witnesses. We all have our cell phones out these days. It's impressive at how many different people's actions are captured out there randomly. So again, all this information is available on resiliencebc.ca. Next slide. And then another question, when is hate crime terrorism? So both hate crimes and terrorism can be committed for ideological reasons, of course. When a significant violent event occurs, both hate crime laws and terrorism laws may apply. And it's a requirement for responsible law enforcement agencies to delegate investigation of any applicable criminal offenses. Just a little bit more on this because it's it's very, very it's all very fresh in our minds. But with the London attack, it's the second time in the past couple years where a murder has also included a terrorism charge. Obviously, the question in 2017 in Quebec City was, why was the shooter not charged with terrorism offenses? Because what that person did was terrorizing. It had a terrorizing effect, so it should be treated as terrorism. I think that there's an understanding that still obviously got a long way to go about the importance of doing that and the need to litigate that. And I think that the discussion at the time in Quebec in 2017 was, terrorism laws don't apply to that person for X, Y, and Z reasons. But I think it's simply a matter of bringing it to the courts and to make a determination there. That's what's happening with the London attacker, and I think that's absolutely the appropriate thing. Next slide. This is just my contact information. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to remove my partner's name. He's been recruited by Surrey RCMP. So I'm, again, like I said, back to a one-person unit. That is my email handle, bc_hate_crimes at the RCMP address. Again, if there are any questions, anybody wants to discuss anything further, by all means, reach out to me and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. And I just want to say once again, thanks for the time this evening. And I hope the rest of the meeting goes really well.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And just for everyone to understand what an amazing job Anthony's doing, all the hate crimes and statistics I mentioned, the person on whose shoulders it falls to investigate is Anthony. And what we're trying to do here is to inform and educate so that we can pressure our politicians to invest more resources in addressing Islamophobia. This is part of what this whole initiative and exercise is about. Because as we can see, to take this issue seriously, we need more resources to support the people who are doing the work at the end of the day in investigating and arresting people who are motivated to attack and to kill and to cause harm. So thank you again, Anthony, for everything you're doing. And God bless you, man. It's amazing.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, thanks, Yusuf, and take care, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, bro. Our next speaker is someone who is a good friend of mine. I just wanted to give him a couple minutes to just say a few words. Omar Kamisa is from NCCM, so the National Council of Canadian Muslims. He's their manager of community engagement. And I just saw him on the call, so I thought I'd just give him a shout out and maybe let him share a couple words with us.
Assalamu alaikum, Yusuf. Sorry, I was trying to mute myself. I think it was locked, but thank you guys so much for inviting me to this session, and really just for having these kind of sessions. They're so essential, and I am really just proud of everyone in this room, all participants, because having these kind of conversations is so important as we move forward. As Yusuf mentioned, and as everyone's going to be mentioning today, like it's such an issue that we are facing. And here at NCCM, it's an issue that we face on the front lines continuously, be it, in Quebec City, in London. And, as we've all seen continuously, almost on a daily basis since London, there's been attack after attack after attack, right? And here at NCCM, it's been one of those things that we've been, almost kind of burning the midnight oil, because it seems like it's an everyday thing. And that's just on this side. And that's not even including everything that's happening in Alberta every night, every day to the Black hijabi Muslim sisters, right? And, having, these steps, is great, but at the end of the day, it's a first step. It's a first step to have this kind of conversation that hasn't been having for a long time, right? Everyone in this room knows the battle that we've been facing for years with M103 and MP Akra Khalid, and, her getting torn down because she called Islamophobia what it was. And this is the first time we're getting a summit for it. So I ask everyone, when we have these conversations, just to be open-minded, have an open space. There might be ideas and policies and perspectives that we disagree on, but at the end of the day, we all want to do one thing, and that is to make sure London never happens again, that Quebec City never happens again, because we all feel the same way. When we remember those days, they're in our hearts and they're etched in our hearts in a way that we can never forget. Right? I remember being there at IMO that night, and being there in London that morning and seeing the community, and it's not some place I ever want to feel again, and it's not a feeling that any of us want to feel again, right? And we all have sisters of our wives, we all have our daughters that are hijabis, that are Muslim, that are visible Muslims, and we need to make sure that this Canada is not one that they feel scared to leave their home in. So having these conversations is great, going to our summit is great, but I ask every one of them, I beg each of you to hold your representatives accountable to everything that comes out of the summit, to make sure that we've elected them into position, that it's now we need to make sure that this Canada is safe for everyone. And I thank Brother Yusuf and Brother Tariq for in Islam Unravelled for hosting these kind of sessions. If there's anything that you guys need, any kind of questions in terms of legal matter about the summit, anything like that, they have my contact as well. Feel free to reach out directly towards us. I'll be here the rest of the evening if there's anything that you guys do come up with and need any help with or anything. Jazakallah khair.
Wayakum, inshallah, Brother Omar. Thank you. Your words are always appreciated, and the work that all of us, especially NCCM, have done is something that is so required. Everyone on this call today and everyone listening has a role to play. We're all on the same team. I think that's the most important thing to remember, and that no matter what a name of an organization is, we're all here to support the safety and security of not only Muslims, but of everyone. It's a matter of life and death. And to speak on maybe some of that challenge, and as Brother Omar was saying, the difficulties faced by Muslims, especially sisters in Alberta and across the country, we have Sister Naima Ali with us. So she is the president, as I said, of the Somali Canadian Society of British Columbia, as well as an educator and a former Somali refugee. She has a wide variety of perspective, as well as being at the intersection of a lot of the challenged identifiable groups that Anthony mentioned, that are facing hate from white supremacists, from ignorant people, and from people who may or may not have mental illnesses, but people who are just out there to attack and to kill people who are different than them. And Sister Naima, thank you for joining and sharing your voice with us. I'd love to hear from you now, please.
Thank you, Yusuf. Hello, everyone. Like Yusuf said, my name is Naima, and I'm glad to be part of this conversation on stopping Islamophobia. Today, we as Muslim women are being targeted. The people who face the majority of Islamophobic attacks in Canada are women. Visibly, Muslim women have been abused, shot at, insulted, pushed into traffic, kicked, stomped on, spat on, beaten, and killed because of anti-Muslim bigotry and hate. In Alberta alone, the Vice Chair of Anti-Racism Advisory Committee in the city of Edmonton has reported that there were 18 attacks against Muslim women in Alberta this year. We also know that hate crimes are vastly underreported, so this number is likely much higher. As a woman, we've long taken precautions, but lately we have to be hypervigilant, reflecting the new normal of living in a country that has seen attacks against Muslim women, most of them Black or people of color, and of course wearing a hijab. These attacks happened in the context of rising hate crimes against Muslims and the emboldening of white supremacists and neo-Nazi organization in the province. As residents of Canada, we care deeply about this country. We should be able to be who we are, worship as we choose, and wear what we want without fear or harassment. Tensions and fear are high. We know that solving the challenge of racist street harassment is a challenge that we are all committed to. And we know that there is no single solution to this problem. No one's born to hate. Hate is a learned behavior. So the question is, how do we as a society unlearn hate? Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Naima. Again, you know, to be in a privileged situation where we are not, many of us are men, many of us are not identifiable as Muslims, it's sometimes hard to understand the feeling of threat that a lot of sisters experience when going outside, just based on the way they look. I will say that the #1 victim of Islamophobic attacks are women. They are the most vulnerable people in our community. And that's not due to anything that they themselves, any shortcomings or weakness on their part, just the fact that they represent an idea that white supremacists hate and are willing to attack no matter the rationale or reason. So again, thank you for illustrating and highlighting that key point, because there are people, even within our community, who think that it's overblown or it's just a hype or that there's no real Islamophobia. And I would say to those people, shame on you, that the lives of our sisters are at risk and we have to stand in justice and we have to stand in defense. I'm going to now ask our community on this call to share your experiences as well as your ideas for how to address this. I'm going to ask that we try and keep this within 2 minutes per person in order to give everyone a chance to share their voice. How Zoom works is if you can raise your hand, it should give you the opportunity to say something. So I'll just go by in order. As soon as I see someone, I'll just ask them to unmute.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is, for the ones on the call who don't know me, I'm a resident of Burnaby, BC. I am actively involved with the provincial BC Greens as well as on a municipal level also in Burnaby. I just recently wrapped up an election campaign a week ago, and I wanted to share my experience of that. Being, you know, one of the Muslim women running here. If I was, unfortunately, I didn't get elected, but had I gotten elected, I would have been the first Muslim woman to get elected. And I received a lot of hate on social media in this campaign because of who I am. My qualifications were questioned. There was a lot of hate, people telling me to go back from where I came from. And it was really, really hard, and it was really a difficult time for me to move past a lot of those hate comments. So I just wanted to share that with you. And the other thing that, you know, I, with Brother Tariq and Yusuf, have been working last year is having these conversations and connecting on different forums and bringing in, you know, more people from the BC Greens and the city of Burnaby, also engaging them. And I think what is important is for all of us to do our part in reaching out to our political leaders, both on a municipal level, on a provincial level, and a federal level, and let them know about these things that we face. I have a call with the mayor of Burnaby, and I'm going to have this conversation with him, and I'm going to tell him all of these things that I have faced, and suggest that he, you know, that the city come up with an anti-racism task force, and they actually do some work around it. And, you know, bring them into these forums also. I've done that before, but I think bringing them and letting them hear our conversation and our side of the story is also very important. So I just wanted to share that a little bit with you from my own personal experience. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other ideas that we can do on a city level. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Shukriya, sister. The road of politics is one that is it never closes, and next time there's always next time. But again, we need Muslim representation in politics, and we appreciate tremendously that the initiative you took to do so. So may Allah bless you and give you barakah in this life and the hereafter for that. Our next speaker, I think, Brother Haroon, you had your hand up next, so I'm just going to ask you to unmute.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you for everybody who's on this call and who organized it. Appreciated Anthony's words as well. It's a real problem. It's very difficult to take. I'm Canadian born, and yet we've experienced racism from the 70s, 80s, and all these decades. But for the most part, you kind of tune it out. And because we feel like such a firm part of it, but all these incidences that have occurred over these years have really opened up our eyes and have motivated us to take action. And I think one of the main things, and Sister Maureen, we really appreciate all the work that you've been doing for running. That we have Brother Shokit that would also run for the provincial elections. It's important to engage at all levels, whether it's in politics, joining the police force. So alhamdulillah, we have a few youngsters who've gone on to take positions in law enforcement. But moreover, everyone has agency. Everyone knows someone, and it's by making yourself known, making your good name and your example as a good human being, a fellow citizen, a fellow traveler in this world. We gain allies, we become allies, and we work together as a community. And that's really a lot of the work that we all need to engage in. But having said that, these disturbing incidences have revealed a pattern of organization. I don't believe it's a coincidence in Alberta, especially that the sheer volume of reported and unreported cases are staggering. The statistics are very, very, very high. And it shows that there appears to be some real collusion here to go and make these attacks. I don't know. There was this fire in Chestermere. I'm not sure if that was arson related or not, but two families lost a lot of members of their family there. But the vicious attacks against sisters all over Canada, here in Vancouver, and in provinces and cities all over the world, we can't stand for that. And so it's important for us to take a stand, but more importantly, for us to engage. So inshallah, from Al Jamia Masjid Vancouver, we'll be hosting the VPD at the mosque, and we'll be setting up a date for that, and also engaging with other levels of government and with our communities in which we live in to make these matters known, make our positions known, and collectively by working with these intersectional movements like Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, Indigenous Lives Matter. These are where on this road of life we all come together. And in these times of solidarity, we can all come together and hopefully change some minds, move some hearts, and make this a better place for all of us. But in the meantime, we must remain vigilant and do the work. So thank you. I appreciate everyone's time. Assalamu
alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah, Brother Haroon. For those who don't know, Brother Haroon is one of our community leaders. He is a a trustee with the Vancouver Al Jamia Masjid, which is the oldest masjid in British Columbia, as well as President Emeritus of the Pakistan-Canada Association. So thank you for sharing your words and wisdom with us. I know we have a few more speakers, but I do see that Brother Azim Daya from the Muslim Food Bank and Aspire is on. Aspire, again, provides tremendous support for our community, and many people who face Islamophobia are in need of support, whether it's mental health support or advice and suggestions on how to overcome the difficulties and trauma that they experienced. Brother Azim, if it's all right, I know it's a bit on the spot, but if you don't mind to share a few words about Aspire and the services that it provides for the Muslim community, I think that would be very beneficial.
Thank you, Yusuf. I really appreciate you giving me some time to talk. I was prepared for it. I wasn't ready for it. And thank you for asking me to talk about the services. So Alhamdulillah, I think a lot of us, a lot of the people here, I recognize most of them. Of course, Brother Musa, Brother Tariq, Brother Harun, Naima, Sister Naima. So most of the people here, Alhamdulillah, we work with, we continue to work with as we assist community members, refugees, people who have challenges in all the aspects from a holistic perspective, where we, through the Aspire program, we provide counseling, whether it's mental health counseling in terms of individuals, youths, family issues. And then through the caseworker program, we do casework for most of our clients that require support, their food insecurity. So we want them to become independent, self-reliant. And as such, we help them in employment, education, skills development, mental health issues, housing, and many other challenges they face towards self-reliance. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you who are leaders here for the organizations that we work together, and we continue to work together. And I think this is a good sign that all of our leaders have are understanding the challenges we face, and we are coming together to come up with strategies which are coordinated and streamlined to counter areas like Islamophobia, areas of ignorance in the mainstream communities. And as we work together, as we coordinate our strategies, so that we all efficiently and effectively, if we can have strategies that join us together to do the same things, all of us together, we will have a huge impact and we'll be able to make bigger changes. So I want to thank each and every one of you, and of course Tariq and Yusuf for taking the lead in this area, that we work together and ensure that that the mainstream community, whether they are in the cities here or even in the rural areas, if we can have an effective strategy to be able to reach out to all the people all over Canada, to just inform them about our culture, our faith, so that the lack of, it's not, Islamophobia is usually through lack of or through ignorance. But once we do outreach and bring about education in our culture and our faith and in all our aspects of our contribution to the mainstream community, and also ally ourselves with our brothers and sisters in the indigenous communities, in other minority communities. I think all these efforts will really help us counter Islamophobia. Thank you. I hope I didn't take more than a few minutes. And thank you very much.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Azim. I apologize, everyone. I'm not sure about the order of who raised their hand first, but I guarantee you we'll get to everyone. I'd like to invite Sister Go next, if that's all right.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah, yes.
Jazakallah khairan for allowing me to speak. My name is, I'm a family physician in Surrey, BC. I'm really interested in that topic, so Jazakallah khairan for holding such a meeting. I have to say I'm not too exposed to open hate situations or hate crimes because of my profession probably, but there's definitely subtle messages or racism that sometimes we're faced at even from our coworkers, unfortunately. What I wanted to say is just a few thoughts that I had or suggestions, because I feel like that's one of the things that we want to share. Once we think about the hate crimes, and I was, really alerted to the fact that most of the hate crimes are against Muslim women. So I'm thinking, wouldn't be a good idea if we can have Muslim women document these incidents? It reminds me of the Me Too movement. So the Me Too movement started, all these incidents or the Me Too movements were individual incidents, right? Some of those people were celebrities, some were unknown. But it started by gathering these testimonies and starting a movement like, why should women be targeted? What I'm thinking of is, in case of Muslim women, documenting these incidents by us as Muslim organization like the NCCM or others, and trying to share it with the media outlets. That way, I think we can achieve two things. The first thing is, it's always good to shame the perpetrator. It's good to make them feel that we are aware of what you're doing and we're not going to allow you to continue that. The second purpose would be to gain empathy from the society, from the community. Normal people are normal, healthy people, white or colored or any culture or religion. They usually have they're kind, and they would not allow themselves to see a hate crime in front of them and stay silent. But we have seen that happen for some reason or another. Maybe because we were victimized all the time, that people saw that easy to happen. Like, it's okay to continue to assault Muslims because they're always victims. And that's how the media depict us in the news. It's always bad news about something happening to Muslims. There's never happy news about Muslims. So people get used to the fact that they're always, subjected to that. What's new? But we want to change that. We want to have people sympathize with Muslims. And if something happened to a Muslim woman, more than one person will stand up to the perpetrator and say, stop, you can do that. And hopefully that will cease to happen, or at least decrease. It's just my thoughts. I just wanted to share. So Jazakallah khair.
Wa yakum, inshallah. Thank you very much, sister, for your words. It's appreciated, and we'll make sure that it's shared, because again, recording what happens is one of the most important steps to addressing this challenge. Brother, I've seen you had your hand up for quite a while. I'm just going to unmute you, and we can hear you.
So can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. My name is Sin. I'm a resident of Richmond, BC. So I wanted to ask a question for Mr. Anthony. He left, but maybe this question for you, Brother Yusuf, Brother Tariq, and whoever is in contact with the administrator. We have seen two incidents, like Quebec and this London incident. Did anybody ask this question to our authority? Yes, that's fine. They caught these people, they give a charge, whatever. But for sure, everybody, we have a feeling, it's not just one person. What did that person or these person, they replied back after? We never heard about the afterward investigation. It's not just one person act, right? We have a right to know, being a Muslim, what he said. It's very easy to say yes, because someone else in future is gonna come and then kill randomly, and then what you gonna, oh yes, we got this person, we gave the charge, that's fine. They must know, right? They did some investigation, and being a Muslim community, we have a right to know what was the result of the investigation. Unless if you know something, so I would really appreciate if you can share with this audience. Jazakallah khair.
Wa yakum, inshallah. Off the top of my head, I don't, but from my understanding, it is a matter of policy for law enforcement not to comment in specifics on ongoing investigations, because that can impact the trial of the individual. So that looks to me what the case is, but I agree with the the core message that eventually we need to have follow-up and understanding of why people are acting. And again, I'll just touch on it briefly, actually. So lone wolf attackers is a misnomer. They are not alone. They have an online community, a web of facilitators, of motivators, of encouragers, people who build a mythology that they buy into. Even though they might never physically ever meet someone to support them, virtually they are being indoctrinated and pushed along to conduct acts of terrorism and attacks. I hope that answers part of your question, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Jazakumullah khairan for hosting this space. I am from Prince George up in the north, and probably something important always to mention is whenever we have these sorts of initiatives, often communities outside of the Vancouver area are often left out. So, and we often hear very last minute about them. So I know it's very tricky to reach out to smaller communities, but nevertheless, we do have we face the same problems that are faced in the lower mainland. And I obviously don't want to repeat everything, but yes, I know people up in the north, because we are a much smaller community, we are much less known. People don't get to meet very many Muslims throughout their life. So we do get the same comments, go back to where you came from, you don't belong here. It's also something because I do support people with different legal inquiries, just given my work. And I know a big barrier to reporting hate or even filing complaints is a language barrier for a lot of newcomers, new Muslims coming to Canada. They are having difficulty navigating the system or finding somebody who can help them report. Last week, I was helping somebody with a human rights complaint regarding Islamophobic comments they faced at work. So that's one of the barriers for a lot of people. So, Jazakumullah khairan for having this space.
Thank you very much, sister. I appreciate it. And, just to quickly touch on the work that we're doing, we are at the official faith-based community convener for British Columbia, not just for Vancouver. So to hear your voice is incredibly important. If you don't mind just DMing me your contact information, we can follow up, inshallah, just into the chat. Shukran. And then Sister.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you very much for the organizers for the invite. I just wanted to say, so I'm a PhD candidate in UBC. I'm in my final year, inshallah. I'm very, very science-oriented person, but this is one of the causes that is very near to my heart, and I want to do something and contribute if I can, inshallah. Just one of the things I am not I don't have a lot of information about how the organizations here work in Lower Mainland, but I know that if we can do something, if we can invite all the organizations together, so I know that we have representation here from a lot of the mosques, but I know that some of the organizations like ICNA, Bridging Gap Foundations, these are like the top two I can think of. If we can invite everyone, have the mayors, as Sister, I think Mehreen mentioned, have the mayors come and listen to us, and then we can have some of these steps we can agree collectively and then move forward with it so that we can be more effective and we can show everyone that we are united. Maybe that way we can be a little more effective. So one of the things just wanted to mention.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to invite Brother Tariq to share some words with us as well.
Thank you, Sister. Yes, we do work with all the Muslim organizations that you referenced. Some of them could not be here, but they sent their comments. To your comment about local government, provincial government. So we are planning in September with the Columbia Institute and Islamophobia Forum with municipal governments, mayors and city councils across the Lower Mainland and British Columbia. So we'll keep you posted on that event. And so that's just a way for Muslim leadership to connect with local city government and also provincial government folks to understand what Islamophobia is. What we've learned, by and large, the majority of the population in Canada are white, Caucasian, Canadian, of European ancestry. So as a result, their understanding of racism, Islamophobia, because they've never experienced racism and Islamophobia, so they don't really know other than what we tell them. So that is just as simple as that. As much as if we felt Islamophobia, discrimination, the average white Caucasian European person of European descent, they've never felt it, so they don't have a frame of reference. We've heard on a number of occasions, there's no racism in Canada because they've never experienced it. So that's what we're dealing with. And it's systemic within, even with our discussion with all the law enforcement agencies in British Columbia. They just said candidly, all our leadership, all our chiefs are white Caucasians. There's no people of color that are senior police chiefs or even in other systemic institutions. So it's this is why we're having this forum. It's just to really illustrate the magnitude of what we're up against, and we have to work on many fronts to affect systemic change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Tariq. I'm going to now give anyone who would like to speak the opportunity to do so. I know maybe some people might have challenges raising it, so if you just want to wave, that should be enough for me to see if there's anybody left who wants to give any words. Otherwise, we'll just close the event. You know, I want to thank everyone for, brother, let me unmute you. I think you might want to have some words. Please go ahead, brother, former president of the BC Muslim Association and a good friend of my dad.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Great forum. Thank you so much, Brother Tariq, Brother Yusuf, for organizing this through NCCM. Appreciate it. I just wanted to leave these 3 ideas and thoughts for everybody to ponder. Number one, this kind of discussion took place with the NDP government when they came into power in BC about 8 years ago. There was a forum for all the leaders of the community. And the key decision at that time was also at the time of Islamophobia, hijab, and niqab issue. After 2-3 hours of discussion, the final point of agreement was the need for education and awareness of different religions within this multicultural society of Canada. So if everybody can be introduced to LGBTQ at the provincial and federal level, why can't a curriculum be instilled in every school where there's a comparative religious studies curriculum agenda in every school? In so doing, every child growing in Canada henceforth will understand what Islam is, will understand what Judaism is, we understand what Christianity is, and Buddhism and Sikhism and all of those. But the key thing is the root, the benefit out of this, the children growing up and all the adults around them will come to understand and respect each other's religion. I believe that very strongly. And I think most of the people attending that meeting also agreed that the fundamental thing we need to do is education. Just like LGBTQ, we can take that as an example and implement comparative religious studies, which is available in universities, but we need to start at elementary school. That's point one. And part of that education, maybe through NCCM and other Muslim organizations in Canada, there used to be a program, I forgot the name of the brother from Toronto, but we used to have an Islamic program, a TV program every Saturday. We need to come back with that TV program national, and we can teach or talk about different religions, different achievement by Muslim women, sisters, doctors, lawyers, people in providing excellent service to Canada as good citizens. These kind of things needs to be highlighted. Plus, we can talk about different prophets, different religions, you know, from Adam alayhi salam to Ibrahim to Moses, Musa alayhi salam to Yusuf, Isa alayhi salam, and etc. Anyway, so those are 2 key things. One, education, and the second part is having a national TV program where we can discuss and bring in and be inclusive have guests from Christian faith, Jewish faith, different faiths. We can have them on our TV and show that we are all working together. We can respect and live in harmony in Canada. The final point, when you see our sisters in hijab, you don't see a sister of one particular color or one particular hijab color. You see sisters of all different colors. You see sisters, who are darker skinned. You see sisters who are completely very white skinned, and in between all different hues of colors. So if we can have a beautiful billboard, this is, imagine a billboard where I can have all these sisters with different ethnic background, but in between there should be pictures of Sikh sisters with their turban. We need to bring the Christian nuns with their headgear, and we have other religion, even Jewish women or whatever religion has headgear. We need to bring them together in a nice, beautiful pictorial storytelling and get a poster made so that people can be aware that we are basically following the teachings of Abrahamic religion. This is basically what all the head coverings and respectability comes together. I think a picture, picture says 1,000 words. Those kind of pictures, the TV program, education curriculum, you think about all those 3 points. And I think that's what we need to do, in my humble opinion, at my old age. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Musa, and thank you for a life dedicated to supporting Muslims for the sake of Allah, and the wisdom that you've gained over the years of service. As we are now nearing the end of the forum, I'd like to give everyone a last chance. If there's anyone who hasn't spoken up, but maybe would like to do so, if there's anyone who wants to share some final comments or anecdotes about their stories or something that either happened to them or their friends, I'll give maybe a couple more seconds for our participants to have the opportunity to do so. Or if not, then we can wrap up the event. But please go ahead and don't be shy. Okay, folks. So Jazakallah khairan for everyone who came here to participate. May Allah accept your intentions and help this to become a beneficial part of the solution to the violence and attacks against not only our community, but everyone in Canada. I want to leave you today with some practical tools to share. I'm going to post the link in the chat. So this is from our colleagues at Resiliency BC. They have a set of resources to provide for people who are the victims of hate crimes or racism. First and foremost, I'd like to reiterate the support that Aspire and the Muslim Food Bank can provide for our community. But then there's also other services across British Columbia, such as Victim Link BC, which is a toll-free multilingual phone service, which is available 24 hours a day in British Columbia. They provide their service in more than 150 languages, and they can provide victim services for information, crisis support, and referrals to anyone who's seen or is a victim of crime. There's a directory of IBOC therapists, which is Indigenous Black people of color. BC Based Healing in Color provides a list of therapists with lived experiences and resources for healing and learning from the IBOC community. There's also Legal Aid BC, which is a nonprofit organization created by the Legal Services Society to provide legal advice and representation to racialized and religious minorities. With that, I want to again thank everyone for their time tonight, for sharing their voices, and for contributing to the story that we're trying to show here, that Muslims in Canada, we are Canadians, and we are here to make the country a safer, more productive, more beautiful place. Also for those who might have been unaware of the reality that our community faces hate and violence and racism, perhaps help educate some closed minds about the reality our sisters and brothers are facing. So Jazakallahu khairan, everyone. Have a beautiful evening. And thank you very much for sharing your voices with us tonight. Take care.